Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Own Your Awkward. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and today we have the amazing, loving, and inspirational Laura Staley. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Andy. It's such an honor to be on the show and to have this conversation with you. I'm really excited.
I am so excited too. We met, I guess a year and a half ago, a little while ago at the NLV conference, and you have just such a bright light, and I have been meaning to invite you on the show, and I had not done some episodes for a little bit and was ramping it back up, and you were like right there, like I got to get Laura on the show, and it happened to be that you just had something exciting happen in your life with your new book. So what can you tell the world about who you are and what you have going on so they know who we're talking to?
Yes, so I'm Laura Staley, as you said. I'm founder of Cherish Your World. I passionately help people thrive in their homes, hearts, and lives. I recently published the book titled Live Inspired, and it's many essays, some poems, reflections about self-discovery. I just go to that place of radical honesty about my own life experiences and share in a way, and then the wisdom I've gleaned from all those rich and wild and woolly experiences of along my journey, and put it out there as an offering for those who would want to engage their own journey, because I quickly learned after my training in Feng Shui that it wasn't just about physical objects, though that is part of it, and where they're placed, and really creating comfort, safety, and flow in our homes. But it's also connected to our hearts and our limiting beliefs, as some people say, the lies that we tell ourselves, and that we can just set some of that down and begin to flow through the emotions that we may have suppressed around experiences that we've had in the past. And I don't know about you, Andy, but one of the things I think I got trained in was, hold it all together, except I'm terrible at it. Right? I've been a crier since I came out of the womb, I think. Right? And the people who attempted to shame me for crying or tell me to not feel what I was feeling was kind of like, what?
Right.
And yet I really did want to please people. I really wanted to be liked and cherished and feel like I belonged. And yet it was a struggle from the get-go, because it seemed like that was a bad fit with certain adults in my life. So, yeah. At any rate, right, please.
No, I was going to say, I have started reading your book, and I will tell people, Laura is like the brightest light of a person that I know, and that's what surprised me when I started reading your book. And I don't want to give away anything that you want to share coming up when we get into the awkward part of you, but I'll tell you, I know you as this super inspirational, warm light and glow and compassionate person. That's what really stood out when I met you, was this loving, caring person who gives out this warm feeling. And when I read the first few pages of your book, I was surprised, because this isn't your typical inspirational, everything is light in the world and there's no problems to overcome kind of, just see all the good. You right away start with some really dark things that you've dealt with in life to get to the light that you're at. And so it's such a good book. It's so, like, from right at the beginning, it's going to draw you in. And it's nice to see that other side that has brought you to where you are.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for letting me know your experience of me. I think at my core, that's what I've gleaned from all those really, really dark experiences with other human beings, is that at my core, there is this compassion, and I think I had to own all the pieces of my own humanity, and then attempt to understand kind of the pain and hurt and darkness of others. Because, like I say, hurt people, or hurt people, hurt adults, hurt children, right? And it's like, wow, how the traumas, the ancestral trauma pattern, right, just gets kind of like paid forward, as opposed to healing and transformation from the inside out and from the outside in, and to learn ways to navigate so that you can truly be yourself and be that loving individual that you really at your core know that you are. And even though it gets questioned at every angle, that you hold fast to that sense of self. And I suppose that's something that served me and kept me alive through those dark experiences. And I did have my dad and a grandmother who were lifelines, and an aunt for that matter, my Aunt Barb. I don't write about them specifically in this particular book, but for listeners to know that those individuals, I mean, I know my dad played his role in the dynamics of my family household, but he also, as best he could, he really modeled an exceptional human being who really valued quality human interactions and respect and dignity and listening. Even if somebody fiercely disagreed with my dad, he really would take the time to listen and not be disagreeable with them, and maybe just kind of agree to disagree, but he did it with so much compassion and so much tenderness. And he was not a large of stature person. So, watching how he behaved, and he cried listening to Dr. King, and when he was filled with gratitude or inspiration, and I think that's where I biologically got that. So I found myself drawn to that modeling, which made a huge difference in my capacity to then build resilience and become the person that I'm really touched to know that that's your experience. That was your experience of me when you met me. But know that it hasn't been. It's been a cultivating process, and it's also been being able to own that darkness. Because sometimes we can go out in the world and kind of put on that happy face and be feeling so much pain on the inside, which I did, right? I would feel this deep shame or these deep hurts inside of me, and yet I so wanted to be seen as a loving human being that, it was my own imposter syndrome, and it was almost like that pretense, if you will, needed to integrate and accept all those past things that had actually happened, so that I wouldn't be held back by shame or the shame of other people's behavior. Because sometimes people, when they do bad things, when adults do bad things to children, the child is blamed, or a child often feels like, oh my God, it's my fault. Right, it's me. It's really me, and to set that down and realize, no. I mean, I remember the watershed conversation I had with my aunt when she shared with me that they sat down. She and her mom. This is my grandma Hope, my dad's mom, and said to my dad before he married my mother, and said, maybe the best thing you can do for this young woman is to walk away. And I was like, oh my gosh, they saw these things about my own mother before I was even born. So, wow, maybe it wasn't me, you know, like maybe. And of course, ultimately, in years of therapy and all kinds of reading I did and transformational workshops and trainings, I quickly learned that, you know, the behavior patterns of not just her but other adults in my life had nothing to do with me, ultimately. Nothing at all to do with me.
Yeah.
And so being able to kind of like take that bowl of soup, if you will, that had been given to me and I ate it, to just kind of like, okay, I ingested that, but I don't have to going forward. And it doesn't have to become part of who I am. I can create and become who I'm committed to being, what really makes my heart sing, what really has me feel inspired about being alive in this precious life. Because, you know, Andy, every single day that we get to live is an opportunity to share, to express, to live, to be grateful. And even when it's hard, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I got tears. Yay, my eyes still work, you know.
Right.
The hot tears are rolling down my face, but that means I'm alive and that I have a heart and that I know how to love, because when you grieve, that means you've loved something. You've loved someone, and maybe you've lost them, but you know, or maybe they've hurt you, but you know that was their pain that they were pouring forward, and it had nothing to do with you. So that's just been a delicious discovery, is to kind of set down those beliefs, set down the belief that I caused other people to be angry. You know, nope.
Now,
you know, another person's anger is their anger.
Right.
Sorry?
Now, would you say that learning to, would you say that's what your darkness or your awkward is, that you've had to learn to own, or is there something else that's made you, what's been the big awkward thing? Has this been it, dealing with that darkness in your life that you need to own,
I think,
or something different?
Yeah, because it's so easy to drag around the shame. Like I wouldn't, like I didn't want anybody to know that I had these awful things that happened in my past, right? I felt this deep shame, and what I've discovered is in telling the story, not from the standpoint of, oh, let's relive this trauma, but more like, oh, this is what I learned about being human. This is what I learned about pain. This is what I learned about trauma. That was the gold. That was the integration. That was like, oh my gosh, I know what it feels like to be terrified. So if I see another human being who's behaving badly or like, you know, unregulated, or we've got all kinds of terms now. They're triggered, they're reactive, right? I can go, wow, I know what that is.
Right, and I know that there's something behind it.
They had something awful. Yeah, there's something behind it that I don't know about. And so can I respond in a way that supports them in interrupting that reactivity? And can I support myself in interrupting my own patterns of reactivity? So the things that I did, can I hold deep remorse, but also understanding that, oh my God, that's what PTSD does. That's what a person who's had trauma, unresolved trauma, that's how they behave, and that's how I behaved. And so then I can have compassion for that human being and myself, because I look like that. That's what I looked like. I did it in private, but this person happens to be doing it at the zoo, right?
Yeah.
Right in front of my eyes, and in front of everybody who's walking around her. And it may not be aligned with her deeper commitment to love her child or all those children who are with her, but she's beating the crap out of that boy right now, with kind of like just blindness and disconnection.
Yeah, it's hard to step out of yourself in that moment.
Exactly. And let's be clear, I was blessed in that I struck my daughter once on the bottom, and it terrified me, and it was kind of like soon after that, and then the episode of losing it in front of both of them when they were really little, that I knew I had deeper work to do, because I could describe it, I could let you know that I was overstimulated, that I was scared that I was going to run into my mother, who could be incredibly cruel, and yet she also showed up very kind. So I saw, this multifaceted human being who could shapeshift on a dime in front of my eyes, and it was like, wow, what made the flip? What made the switch flip? And then, reading and educating myself and coming to understand, mental and emotional challenges inside of people and trauma. It was like, oh, okay, that's what that was.
And so how did you feel in that moment when you realized something had to change? Like, was it a buildup over time? Was it an instant thing? And how were you like, oh, I know what I'm going to do? Or was it something has to change, but I'm lost? Or what was going on in your head when you realized that?
Oh, well, so I was awash with shame. Because, I opened my eyes and I saw these two terrified children. It was a watershed moment. And I had been doing a lot of I would call it intellectual work and talk therapy. I mean, I began that before my kids were even born, because I literally had thoughts of killing myself, because my inner bully, that's what I called it, that inner thought in the head that was just so mean to me. I knew I needed to dismantle that, but what I didn't understand is that trauma is in the nervous system and it lives in the body. So I couldn't think my way out of my reactivity. I literally needed support from professionals to guide me to clipping that wire to the bomb that would blow. and so I got practiced. So at that juncture with my kids and being awash with shame, I knew people who were letting me know. It was so interesting, again, those synchronicities, right? Who had let me know, hey, I'm doing this trauma work with the body, and let me know if you're interested, or people who are interested, that kind of thing. And oh my gosh, I absolutely reached out, and I double teamed myself for an intensive period of time as I went to work on dismantling my own trauma triggers, so it would no longer. So at that juncture, I knew what I needed to do. I absolutely knew what I needed to do. I needed to go to my body and allow my body, and with the guidance of those professionals, to support me in releasing every piece of trauma that I had experienced from, early in my childhood, all the way up to interactions with, certain people in my life, even when my kids were little, and then ultimately choosing to walk away from relationships that were, I would describe them as dysfunctional, toxic. I mean, there's lots of words, but they were just not going to, the other person wasn't able to own their ways of interacting with me. And when somebody else can't own or take responsibility for how they're interacting with you, I've learned that it's time to peace out, and that the work remains with me. And I can have compassion for where they are, but I need to remove myself, so I'm no longer in an explosive or reactive interaction with another human being that's clearly bringing out the very worst behaviors in that human being, especially when I knew that certain human beings that I'd interact with would go be with other people and they would be on their best behavior. And then part of me was like, wow,
it's such a game.
It really is me.
Yeah. Right, and that's unfortunate, because we always hear that comment, if you constantly have the same situation with people, then you're the common denominator. So, and unfortunately, we're told and we take it to mean that we are the problem, and it doesn't mean that, we take that to be, okay, then I'm the one that I need to look at. But what I've learned is that it doesn't necessarily mean you're the one causing the problem, but you need to learn how you're showing up so that you can protect yourself from being in that situation. And it could be that you need to learn how to not let those things into your life, and that's where you're causing the problem for yourself, but it doesn't mean that you're the bad guy necessarily.
Oh, exactly. And yes, the inside work is imperative. It just to come clean with inside yourself of the words and behaviors that I've done. Like, I can't be responsible for the words you speak or the behaviors you do, Andy, but I can take 100% responsibility for what I say and what I've done and what I've said and what I do and what I say. And I've learned that I'm the only one. I can't get inside the heart and soul of any other human being, not anyone else. I am the only one who can get right with me and heal and release and choose silence, sometimes choose to calmly speak my truth and stand my ground, but to walk away, to not let, as I love how Gandhi says it, he says, I don't let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet. And it's like that, right? To not allow someone else's thought or spoken thought of who they think you are to then become who you are, especially if it's really not aligned.
Right, yeah, because there are so many actions that I feel we take that are reactive, that if we sat down and said, how do I want people to feel after their interactions with me? How do I want them to walk away from experiencing me? And many times our actions are not in line with that principle, yet it's easy for us to write it off in our mind because we say, well, that's because this person did that, or that's because they came at me this way. But it doesn't change the fact that they're walking away from you with an experience that isn't in line with your principles.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, and sometimes silence is incredibly powerful.
That's I don't feel like I should say anything right now because silence, because it is powerful. You're right.
Right. You're like, oh. Yeah.
No. It's like, what do I say after that? Just be quiet and listen. But you're right.
I know, right. Well, whatever. Yeah. And I've taught myself to go to neutral, right? I mean, it's pretty rare. I think I still grieve a great deal, but it's really rare for me to feel full-blown anger or rage inside myself any longer. I mean, that's years of, working through traumas. And I'm so grateful to have that support of these experts. I mean, there's a lot that we now know about neuroscience and the plasticity of the brain and post-traumatic growth. It's really exciting. But being able to, place the tongue on the roof of my mouth, soften my eyes, if I'm standing, which I am right now, to soften my knees, to bend my knees, to really ground and feel my body to the floor. Even if you're sitting in a meeting and you have that, well, and to tune into the body sensations, because usually the body will tell us if we're being threatened or, something's coming at us. But a lot of times it's not a woolly mammoth. It's just a human being sharing an idea that happens to set off this whole chain reaction inside of our bodies and our minds and the amygdala, that fight, flight, freeze, that to pattern interrupt that with these practices. I know a lot of people talk about deep breathing or, what I like calling going to neutral. And there's that beautiful quote that I love so much from Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response is that space. And in that space of quiet, we find our power and our freedom. Because no matter what someone else might be saying or doing, we get to still choose from deep inside our deepest values, our deepest commitment of how we want to respond to this other human being. And especially a human being who's unregulated and in a lot of pain and hurt. So how can I hold space and compassion for this other human being who's coming unglued right in front of my eyes? And to really, really trust that it's not about me. It's just not about me. And it's a journey, it's a practice, it's an everyday, getting in touch with what you deeply care about, and like you said earlier, Andy, how do I want to leave? Do I want to leave people feeling loved and seen and heard and deeply respected and valued, even if we disagree and have very different points of view? Can I stand and look in the eyes of another human being and appreciate where they're coming from, what has them think that way and feel that way and respond or react that way, and without judgment, right? Well, and then not to hold that judgment on myself, right? In the times that I look back, and felt that deep shame, to go, oh gosh, I now know what terror feels like. I know what trauma looks like when it's unresolved in the body. I know that in my own body. I know what joy feels like. I know what feeling loved feels like. Most of us do. Yeah. When you've really, really been heard and seen and valued, you feel it all the way through your body, right? I mean, you might even get goosebumps.
I know you're kind of giving them to me right now because I'm like, wow, that's such a true statement. It's like, yeah.
It's just, and so we have, the truth is we have these experiences of being valued, of being seen, of being appreciated, that, okay, I get to be a generator of that for another human being.
Yeah.
No matter no matter their packaging, no matter what has gone before them, I get to be the change that I want to see in the world. I get to be that love, that compassion, that space holder, that energy vibration that will say, I see you. I see your pain, but I see your love. Because sometimes we don't see people beyond their pain and their hurt. Because underneath pain, hurt, and anger is a huge well of love. People are just aching to be loved. And the love is all inside of us already. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, it's inside of you. It's not mystical. It's really there. And when we experience it, we know it. And maybe we experience it when we're standing next to a tree, or looking at a lake, and we feel that. We feel that nature is just, pouring its love. We're standing in the sunshine, and we feel, part of it is, that was part of a saving grace when I was a little kid, is I went out in nature and I realized, man, the grass doesn't scream at me,
Right, yeah. There's comfort here at least, right?
Yeah. And so I found this beautiful bond with all things in nature, and now including black bears and deer and hummingbird and all kinds of things that pop out here in the mountains of North Carolina. But yeah, I think when we have that experience, to then be somebody who generates that experience for another human being, and then it's an honor.
I think that is,
it's a privilege.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I hate to say it, but we are coming right up to the end here. I could talk to you for hours about this. It's just beautiful. So I so appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's such a joy to be in this conversation with you, Andy. I honestly am deeply grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. I so appreciate it. I've learned so much.
Oh, it's great to be on your show, and thanks so much for the conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Okay, you too.
Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.